A few months have passed, and we see the depressed Rudy sitting in a carriage. Suddenly, a woman asked him why he looked so sad. She tried to cheer him up, but Rudy acted rude towards her. A girl got angry because he was so rude to them. The cheeky girl's behavior reminded him of Eris, and he replied that he was looking for his mother. So they learned the reasons why he made a sad face. Suzanne knew he didn't know anything about the Northland, and she explained him about the Northland Kingdom. Later they arrived in a new town, and we see the adventurer party of Suzanne headed to the guild house. So Rudy entered an inn, and he booked an Airbnb apartment for several weeks. Following this, he paid the inn owner with a huge amount of money, and he took the room at the 3rd floor. Rudy was exhausted, and he missed Eris, who left him alone. Suddenly he remembered that he was not traveling to get over his heartbreak, and thought about a plan to find his mother. So Rudy visited the guild house, and the adults underestimated him. They thought he is a newbie, and looked down on him. Followed, Rudy asked a woman to help him disband his party. After that, his party was officially disbanded, and the other adventurers thought his party members got wiped out. Rudy took a job, and the receptionist was worried, because he chose a difficult quest without a party. Suddenly, Rudy felt severe pain, but Suzanne appeared and his condition became stable again. She heard about his conversation, and she asked why he wanted to take a reckless job. As a result, she took the job with Rudy together to help him. Following this, she invited him to a drink and introduced him to her party. Rudy thought she just pities him, and Sarah didn't like Suzanne's decision to help a rude boy. Then she learned Rudy is a mage, who specialized to support melee fighters. In the meantime, Rudy noticed that Sarah's behavior was similar to that of Eris, and she looked at Rudy in disgust. In the next morning, Rudy got nervous, and he grabbed into his pocket to calm him down. Followed, Suzanne and her party appeared. Rudy introduced himself, and she welcomed him on her party, but Rudy acted weird. Then they went off, and he learned Suzanne is the sub-leader of the party Counter Arrow. On the way to the mission, all members of the party introduced themselves to Rudy. Suddenly Sarah told him she will beat him up if he made them trouble on the job. Suzanne stopped her and said she should let it slide, because she will work with many other adventurers in the future. So Rudy thought they just using him to teach Sarah, and he got the face of Eris in his mind. In the evening, Timothy told Rudy the weakness of the Luster Grizzlies, but he already knew about the weakness of the monster. Then they discussed about the combat strategy, and Sarah was still sulking. She thought Rudy is a spoiled kid and didn't like his attitude. The reason was, he wanted to help them in the fight on the middle range, but Sarah refused to work with him together. Later, Timothy apologized for Sarah's rudeness, and he tried to cheer him up. After that, we see Sarah and Suzanne located the Luster Grizzlies, and they were ready to fight them. Timothy cast a fire spell and began with his attack. Following this, they attacked, and Rudy cast a spell to let them slip on the ground. Timothy launched a second attack, and he defeated many of the Luster Grizzlies with ease. Suddenly, Rudy used his Bear Grylls survival skills and was shocked to sense a dangerous noise. They noticed that a big group of black grizzlies rushed towards them. Timothy told them to retreat, but Rudy used his Demon Eye Sharingan and knew it's too late. However, Rudy didn't want to fight anymore, and he accepted to die against the grizzlies. Suzanne didn't let him throw his life away, and she protected Rudy. After that, they were surrounded, and all adventurers were motivated to fight. They supported each other, and didn't give up to win against the black grizzlies. Suddenly, Suzanne was badly injured, and Timothy cast a heal spell to treat her injuries. Rudy saw them all fighting and noticed that no one's tried to run away. Then Rudy noticed he is a burden for them, and he realized that they are all doing their best to survive together. Suzanne and her party were all exhausted, and he got the motivation to help them in the fight. So Rudy told them not to worry, and said they should leave the fight to him. Rudy started to cast a strong fire spell, and he managed to create a gigantic fireball. Then he shot his fireball against all grizzlies at once, and he managed to defeat them all. In the followed morning, they dismantled the grizzlies, and they were glad that Rudy saved them. As a result, Rudy managed to find his meaning in life again. Following this, Rudy thanked Suzanne that she agreed to bring him along. Suzanne and her friends were happy that they could see Rudy smile again. Back in the guild house, the other adventurers looked down on Rudy and didn't accept him. Timothy tried to change the mood of them, so he said he will buy a round for everyone here to celebrate his first job with Rudy. As a result, they welcomed Rudy in the new town, and he was happy to meet new friends. All adventurers celebrated with Rudy and welcomed him in the town. In the evening, he took his treasure out of his pocket, and he remembered something important. He understood he didn't lost everything in his life, and he remembered the beautiful day when Roxy took him outside for the first time. This enabled him to overcome his lovesickness, and he decided to work hard again from now on. After a few months passed, we see Rudy running in the morning. He began to build muscle and decided to become strong like Saitama. So Rudy tried the One Punch Man challenge, and his plan was to save his mother as an S-rank hero. In the afternoon, he was ready for the day and went to the guild house. Arriving in the guild, he saw an arrogant adventurer. He accepted a difficult job and looked down on Rudy. However, Rudy didn't care about him, and he found new friends in the new town. After that, he took a new job, and his plan was to making a name for himself in the Northland. Rudy became known as Quagmire, and his reputation in town preceded him. His hard work was paid off, and he hoped to find his mother soon. He started his day clearing the city of snow and cleaning the streets. Later, Rudy healed an injured girl and saw the bright side of life. Sarah saw him doing good deeds and went to her job. After this, he went home and he met Sarah. She asked him if he wants to join the job, but Rudy knew to team up with the counter-arrow party doesn't do much for his goal. Sarah said he didn't need to join them if he didn't want to team up. Then Suzanne appeared, and he accepted to join them on the next job. Rudy and his friends went to the Gala ruins, and he was surprised about the huge fortress. Following this, Rudy could prevent an accident, and he saved Sarah in time. Rudy got Riz aura, and she wasn't angry at him that he touched her boobs. Afterwards, they found a snowdrake scale, and they went down to gather up all snowdrake scales. Rudy knew they were in the snowdrake territory, and he felt like he recognized that statue from somewhere. He realized the statue looked similar like Kishirika. Suddenly, many snowdrakes appeared, and Rudy warned all of his friends. The snowdrakes rushed towards them, and Rudy created a huge earth wall to block the path. Unfortunately, the monsters managed to get past his wall, and he cast an ice spell to defeat them. His attack failed, and he was glad that his friends managed to escape. Sarah saved Rudy with her arrow, and Timothy launched strong fire spells against them. Also, Suzanne showed up, and she fought with Patrick the snowdrakes. Rudy was glad that they didn't let him down, and Sarah told him to help them in the fight. Suddenly, another adventurer appeared, and he slayed down many snowdrakes with his insane sword skills. They managed to survive with the help of the strong adventurer. After that, Timothy introduced his party, but he was punched in his face. The arrogant adventurer was angry and thought they tried to swipe his party's prey. She was angry because they were doing jobs in different places, but Timothy tried to calm her down and wanted to clear up the misunderstanding. Timothy managed to clear up the misunderstanding with the rude guy. Sol apologized for punching him and allowed them to claim one of the snowdrakes. Back in the guild, they celebrated together, and Rudy was happy about the invitation of Sarah. Rudy was grateful that they didn't let him down in the ruins. After that, Suzanne teased Sarah a little bit, and she knew Sarah got a crush on Rudy. After that, Rudy wondered if his father was like adventurer Sol when he was younger. Suddenly, Sol appeared, and he was very drunk. He apologized for insulting them, and knew he had made mistakes. Then, being drunk, he started saying all his thoughts out loud, and he insulted Rudy for lacking self-confidence. Rudy tried to ignore him, but his words hurt his feelings. He realized the guy wasn't wrong, and he apologized for being an eyesore. Suddenly, Sol got more angry because Rudy turned down the rewards to get his name out there. He said they all needs money to live, and his friend tried to stop him. In the followed morning, Rudy met the rude guy in the guild house again. He asked Rudy if he hunted for scraps again, but Rudy replied he had his reasons. Following this, his friends entered the guild house and they looked sad. Rudy learned Mimi died, and Sarah was separated in the last job. Timothy was ashamed, and Suzanne said that if they had kept looking for her, they would have died too. As a result, Rudy decided to find Sarah, and he packed all his stuff to go outside. Rudy stopped the blizzard with a spell, and he went off. On the way to the Trier Forest, he remembered the rude guy's words and asked himself if he was happy doing good deeds for nothing in return. On the way to save Sarah, he defeated many monsters. Rudy was shocked to see Mimi's corpse, and he wanted to bring the leftover body of Mimi back to his friends. Suddenly he saw an earring of Sarah, and he thought she was dead too. Rudy burned the corpses down, and he was attacked by a monster. However, Rudy dodged the attack and he found Sarah, who was alive. He tried to save her, and a tree cast powerful spells against Rudy. So Rudy jumped into the sea with Sarah, and he was able to save Sarah. Rudy found a cave, and he used his healing spells to treat her injuries. Sarah noticed that he can see her underwear, and she got nervous. Then Rudy asked if something is wrong, and she replied everything is fine. In addition, he told Sarah that Mimi died. On the next morning, they headed back, and Sarah told Rudy she was glad that Rudy came to rescue her. Arriving in the town, her party members were surprised to see Sarah. They learned Rudy sneaked out to save Sarah in the forest. Suzanne was angry because his actions were reckless, and she was concerned for him. Then she thanked him, and Timothy cried tears of joy because he risked his life to save one of his beloved party member. In the following weeks, we see Rudy toasting with his friends. Since that day, he had been working with Counter Arrow almost constantly. His reputations grew in the city, and he got in the time closer to Sarah. Sarah asked him about his parents, and she learned that a female mage was Rudy's tutor. Rudy noticed that Sarah was jealous by hearing him talking about girls. Suddenly, she changed the topic and asked Rudy if he wants to accompany her by buying a new knife. Rudy was happy to go shopping with her. Meanwhile, Suzanne and Timothy smiled and noticed too that Sarah got a crush on Rudy. In the following day, Rudy had a date with Sarah, and they started looking around town. Then they went to visit a blacksmith shop, and she asked Rudy for his advice. Sarah found 2 daggers that matched each other and showed it Rudy. As a result, Rudy bought her a new dagger, and she was very grateful about his gift. In the evening, they drank booze together in a tavern, and Sarah noticed her jacket got a little tight. Rudy blushed, and Sarah said she is also very tight underneath. So Rudy activated his Riz power, and he used the moment to rizzing into her pants. Then Rudy thought he screwed up, but she was happy about his try to shot his load. She told him that she wants to see his room. Rudy was surprised that he could seduce Sarah, and he said he will show her his room. Following this, they went to his room and Rudy lit a candle to set the mood. Then Sarah said she is very grateful, because she would have died if he hadn't come looking for her. Rudy got permission to have fun with her, and he started right away. Rudy showed Sarah his strong muscles that he had built with the One Punch Man challenge, and he was ready to make with her a baby. Suddenly Rudy realized something went wrong, because his sausage wasn't ready. He was stunned, and didn't know why his body didn't react to that shorty in front of him. As a result, Sarah was ashamed, and her feelings got hurt, because she thought she was the reason. She left his room and Rudy went down to drink booze. Suddenly Saul appeared, and he made fun of him to see Rudy had an unlucky day. Rudy was angry about his words, and he punched Saul. So Rudy asked him if he is happy to see him suffer, and he didn't stop to punch Saul. Saul learned that Rudy had his own problems, and always faked a smile so no one would worry. Then he cried in front of everyone, and Saul apologized for treating him every day like scum. He tried to cheer him up, and he learned Rudy was dumped by a girl. Following this, Rudy told Saul about his story with Eris. Saul learned that Eris ditched him, and he couldn't understand why Eris left him. As a result, Rudy thought he must have been bad in bed, and his new friend tried to cheer him up. Followed Saul got an idea to solve his problem with his sausage, and he was sure that he can fix him. Saul told him to follow him, and he showed him a paradise only for men. However, Rudy arrived in a place and saw many beautiful girls. Then he went to a room, and Elise welcomed him, and was happy about his visit. Elise told him that he healed her little sister last winter, and he remembered about the little girl, who he helped. After that, she told him to enjoy the fun with her, and Rudy was very nervous. Elise started to strip off, and she told him to relax on her bed, because she will serve him tonight. A short time later, Rudy reported that his hot dog was overcooked, and Elise apologized, that she couldn't solve his problem. Then she said it seemed that Rudy was well frightened of women. Saul understood that his problem isn't easy to solve, and he tried to cheer him up. In the followed morning, Saul told him he will help him with his sausage problem, and he gave him the advice not to rush. The reason was rushing in blind just gets more people hurt, and he was able to motivate Rudy. Afterwards, Saul asked about Sarah, and he explained to Rudy that she lied to him because her pride was hurt. Then he suggested Rudy to talk that out, and he replied he will see her anyways. Rudy talked a lot of nonsense, and his friend tried to stop him. The reason was Sarah heard all of his awful words. She slapped him and said he is the worst. So Sarah never wanted to see him again, and Suzanne told him that was way out of line. Rudy was ashamed, and Saul stopped him to do stupid things. After that, Saul thought it will help him if he visit his family. However, Saul learned his home is far away, and he got another idea. As a result, he invited Rudy to accompany him to his next job in a labyrinth. He said he didn't like his fake smile, but he didn't want to let him down. Rudy noticed Saul is a good guy, and he was grateful about his offer. He accepted his offer and was ready to accompany him to a new adventure. After that, we see Alina, who was searching for Rudy. She gathered information, and she used her seduction skills to find his location. In the followed weeks, we see Rudy with the adventurer group of Saul in the mountains. Rudy used his earth magic to locate the monsters. He reported Saul that 8 grizzlies rushed towards them with an enormous speed. Then Rudy trapped the grizzlies with a mud spell, and Soul commanded his friends to attack. They slayed down the grizzlies with ease, and all monsters were wiped out instant. Suddenly another monster appeared, and one of them reported that the grizzlies were running from a red dragon. Soul asked Rudy how he couldn't sense the red dragon, and he replied the clouds covered his view. Following this, the dragon attacked them, and Soul told them to retreat. Rudy used spells to create smoke, and he was attacked by the red dragon with his breath of fire. He managed to dodge the attack and cast a strong water spell. After that, Rudy attacked him with a strong earth spell, and he managed to trap the strong dragon with a mud spell. As a result, he ended the life of the dragon with a huge rock, and everyone were amazed to see the power of Rudy. Back in the town, Soul invited Rudy to join his party, but he refused, because he will soon move to the next country to find his mother. In the evening, he prays to the panties of Roxy and went to sleep. The next morning, Rudy trained and completed the One Punch Man challenge every day, which allowed him to build a lot of muscles. After that, he ate his oatmeal with his whey of my protein. Suddenly, he saw a guy who thought he is the next Chris Brown, but everyone complained about his song. Out of nowhere, Alina appeared in the tavern, and she said he finally found him. Suddenly, Alina licked her lips, and he thought the woman is after his bodybuilding body, that he trained every day for the Arnold physics. Following this, she told him she was in the party of his father Paul, and she's a friend of Roxy. Rudy was surprised about the news, and Alina whispered she heard about his heroic deed to slay down a strong dragon. She understood why Roxy boasted about him, and she got a liking on Rudy. She planned to play with Rudy, and she found the necklace, which was a gift of his childhood friend. Suddenly, she showed him her own necklace, and she said she stopped because she didn't want to end up Paul's daughter-in-law. Then Rudy learned she wanted to tell him good news. Rudy learned about the whereabouts of his mother, and he knew traveling to a new continent will be difficult. So he decided to stay in this country, because Roxy formed with Paul a party to find his mother. Later, Alina greeted Rudy, and he noticed a guy was behind her. He learned Alina belongs to the streets, because she made love with every man in the town. A few days later he hoped that his problem with little Rudy could be solved, but his try failed, and he was very depressed about his situation. In the followed morning he met his friend Soul, and he apologized, but Rudy told him Alina isn't his girl. Soul told him he had a lot of fun with her, and Rudy knew she seduced a bunch of guys a few days before. Then they went down and ate lunch together, but Rudy got a little bit jealous. He wondered how she can keep a harem of dudes and still stay out of trouble. Following this, Rudy learned she used the power of money to stay out of troubles. A few weeks passed and winter fell on. Alina showed him a letter, and he got an invitation of the University of Magic. Renoa University of Magic was interested in Rudy and invited him as a special student. So Rudy thought about the letter, but he needs to figure out if it's legit. In the next morning, he asked his friend Conrad about his experience in the Renoa University. As a result, he learned that the school wasn't a total scam. Also, Conrad learned Rudy is a gray rat, and he wondered why he is doing solo as an adventurer. He apologized about his question, and Rudy remembered about his original goal. Suddenly, Alina showed up and tried to seduce her next guy. She told him to accept the invitation to the magic school. Afterwards, Rudy met Man God again, and he was surprised to see him after 2 years. Man God asked him if he is happy that his mother was found by Roxy. Then Man God started to tease Rudy, and he said his spellcasting is only a little better than a few years ago. He gave Rudy the advice to visit the Renoa Magic School and said he will regret it if he didn't accept the invitation. Rudy wasn't sure, but Man God told him he will find in the school a solution for his sausage problem. Later, Rudy woke up, and he saw a naked Alina sleeping in his bed. He realized he needs to solve his problem, and got the intention to travel to the Renoa University of Magic School. In the followed morning he said goodbye to his friend, and his best friend sulked. Rudy was grateful that Soul had always taken care of him in recent years, and he wished him good luck to find a way for solving his big problem in his pants. Then Rudy went off to his new journey, and he looked forward to learn more about magic. In the days that followed, he traveled to the city of Renoa, and didn't know that he would soon be meeting familiar faces. In the followed months, Rudy finally arrived in the city of Renoa, and he intended to meet the person who invited him. Alina wanted to join him, because she had developed an interest in boys his age. On the trip with Alina, he learned she was cursed and she would die unless she sleeps with men on the regular. So they went to the Magic University of Renoa, and Genius introduced himself and told him he is a teacher of the school. Genius was surprised to see Rudy, and Rudy told him that Roxy gave him the advice to enroll in the school. Following this, He said he'd like to learn and accomplish a number of things in the school. Genius asked him to participate in a little test, and he told Rudy more about the magical school Ranoa. Genius found out that Rudy was interested in healing spells, and he admired him for his great attitude. After that, Genius said, he would like Rudy to demonstrate his spellcasting without incantations. Rudy learned they had another caster, who was able to use wordless magic. Rudy introduced himself, and he didn't know that Fitz was his childhood friend Sylphie. Then he was told that his test will be a mock duel, without incantations against Fitz. Rudy saw the wand of Fitz and he found it suspicious. Suddenly Fitz tried to launch an attack, but he was able to stop her spell with his observation haki. As a result, he ended the battle in a short moment, and Fitz was confused. So Rudy explained, he used a spell called Disturb Magic, and he noticed all students were staring at him. So Rudy thanked Fitz for letting him win, and was surprised by Fitz's soft hands. Later he was accepted as a special student, and he had many privileges. Rudy was happy that he was exempt from teaching as a special student, and Alina visited him. She asked Rudy for his opinion on her school outfit because she intended to seduce many boys. Following this, the student council appeared, and all students admired them. Alina teased Rudy a little bit because he won last time against Fitz. Then Ariel started her speak, and she introduced herself to the new students. She welcomed them to the school, and Rudy was stunned by her charisma. However, she wished everyone to have fun in the University of Ranoa, and Rudy noticed that Fitz glared at him. After the ceremony, Rudy was on his way to find the classroom for special students. Suddenly, Zenoba recognized his master, and he ran towards Rudy. He was very happy to see his beloved master, and Rudy was scared by his pupil. Followed a girl named Linnea said she didn't like him. Rudy introduced himself, and he bowed to her. As a result, she liked his behavior to treating her like an important person. He learned that Linnea is the eldest daughter of Gaius, and he was surprised about the news. After that, he noticed another Beastmen people, and her name was Persena. She had no interest in Rudy, and ignored him. Then Rudy chose a seat, and he was approached by Cliff, who described himself as a magical genius. Cliff told him he is able to use barrier magic, and Rudy was surprised that Cliff knew about his swordsman skills. Suddenly Rudy learned that he was befriended with Eris, and he asked about her. Zenoba noticed that Rudy was in a bad mood, and he changed the topic. Zenoba said that he got another classmate named Silent, but she spent all her time in her laboratory. Later, Rudy walked through the school and he looked around. He went to the school library and tried to find a solution for his problem to make something big. Following this, Rudy met Fitz, and he apologized because of his actions caused Fitz to lose his face. Fitz wasn't angry at him, and she learned that the Mana Sister sent him to the Demon Continent. Then he told Fitz that he enabled the school to find his missing friend. Sylphie left him and she didn't reveal him her true identity, but she suggested him great books about teleportation. In the afternoon, Rudy had lunch with Zenoba and they became good friends. Suddenly, Luke appeared and he looked down on Rudy. He said his name is Luke Nodos Greyrat, and Rudy was surprised about his name. Following this, Zenoba explained Luke's situation in the school, and Rudy learned more about the story of Princess Ariel. So Zenoba said Luke and Fitz are the princess's bodyguards, and they are both very talented. In the evening, he went back to his room and he found a white tissue. Rudy realized that it wasn't a tissue, and he wanted to return the panties to the owner. Suddenly, a girl called him an underwear thief, and she caused a big misunderstanding. He was surrounded by many girls, and a gorilla girl was very angry. Rudy tried to clear up the misunderstanding, but the girls didn't believe him. In the last moment, Sylphie appeared, and she said it was her fault, because she dropped the panty of Ariel when she was hanging them out to dry. Sylphie tried to talk with the girls, but the ugly gorilla girl didn't let it slide. Then Sylphie threatened Goliath with her wand, and Rudy was spared. After that, Sylphie healed up Rudy, and she apologized, because she dropped those panties. Rudy wasn't angry, and thanked Fitz, who cleared up the misunderstanding. Suddenly Fitz said it feels strange, hearing him thank her. He was confused, but he felt something familiar by talking with Fitz and blushed. A few weeks passed, and Rudy started like every day his morning routine. Also he noticed that Fitz trained in the early morning too. After his workout, he tried to improve his skill, because Zenoba begged him to teach him figure making. Then he ate lunch with his friend Zenoba, and he saw Alina. She spends all her time to seduce guys, and Rudy was glad that she had fun in the school. In the afternoon, he took basic classes in healing and barrier magic. Rudy enjoyed the time to learn more about magic. When he is not in class, Rudy always visits the school library, and he researched more about teleportation. So we saw Rudy's daily cycle, and before going to sleep, he always relaxed in his bed. In the days that followed, Rudy was in the library and Sylphie appeared and asked if she could sit with him. She asked how his research is going and he noticed about her book about teleportation. Rudy learned that someone he knew went missing in the Mana disaster too. She told him he didn't need to worry because she recently learned the person is alive. Then she asked Rudy that she'd like to help him investigate the mass teleportation. Rudy was grateful, and he blushed by seeing Fitz smile. He was surprised that he was into Mans, because he didn't know about Fitz's true identity. In the evening, Rudy thought he got closer to Fitz and he asked Fitz about his sunglasses. So Fitz replied that he plans to be a rapper, and she panicked that Rudy would find out her true identity. Then Rudy wondered why he was called the Silent Fitz. Sylphie avoided the topic because she didn't want that Rudy find out about her identity. After that, Rudy asked Fitz about her ability to cast without incantations. She replied a long time ago her master rescued him and taught her everything. Then Rudy saw Fitz smile and he couldn't understand why his heart beat faster. Rudy knew he wasn't into men, but he just followed the advice of Man God. Back in the dormitory, Rudy was asked by his friend for advice. He learned that Zenoba is a figure geek who took things too far. Rudy told Zenoba to wait longer because he promised him to teach him making figures. Following this started with his first lesson, and Zenoba failed to create figures with magic. As a result, he was sad, and Rudy cheered him up. He told Zenoba that he will show him another option to create action figures. Zenoba was happy about the second option, but he learned he is hopeless. The reason of his failure was his super strength, and he was sad that he couldn't sculpt like his master. In the followed morning, he told Fitz about Zenoba's problem. Fitz understood that making figures is very difficult and tried to find a solution. Fitz got an idea and told them the nobles solve the problems with servants. Following this, Rudy got the idea to find a good servant for Zenoba, and Fitz asked Rudy if he could accompany him. In the afternoon, Fitz introduced himself to Zenoba, and he talked a lot of nonsense. Rudy stopped him and told Zenoba to show Fitz proper respect. Then they went off and looked around the town together. Followed, they found a shop where they could buy servants for the problem of Zenoba. Fitz was surprised that they were naked, and Rudy noticed that Fitz is a virgin. He told Fitz that he will be gained experience someday too. Suddenly Zenoba disturbed his talk and said he needs to find a servant who is able to cast magic. Fitz told them they should pick a child because there are many advantages with a young age. Also, Rudy learned that he got so much mana because he started using magic at a young age. They then asked the dealer if he had a dwarf that was 5 years old. He couldn't find a 5-year-old one, but he found a 6-year-old dwarf. As a result, Rudy and his friends asked the merchant to let them see the dwarf girl. The merchant led them to the child, and Rudy tried to ignore the terrible circumstances. After that, Sylphie noticed the girl was in a bad condition and she healed her. Rudy went to the girl and introduced himself with the dwarf god language. She didn't react, and Rudy learned she was in despair because she had the hopeless look of someone who longs for death. Rudy knew his eyes looked the same like hers a few years ago, and he asked the girl if she wants to die. Suddenly she reacted to his words, and he offered her to save the girl. In the last moment she replied, she don't want to die. As a result, Rudy decided to save the girl, and he bought her. After that, they bought her dinner, and Sylphie asked about her name. The girl replied she doesn't have a name, and Sylphie remembered dwarves don't get proper names until they turn 7. Then they tried to come up with a cute name for the girl, and Zenoba suggested a silly name. Rudy got a perfect name, and asked if the girl liked her new name Juliet. She was glad about her name and smiled. Then Rudy decided that Julie would live with Zenoba, and during the day, he taught her magic. Then Rudy was glad to see Julie happy with her new life, and he smiled. In the followed morning, we see Sylphie woke up, and she brushed her teeth. After that, she went out, and she almost forgot to wear her cap. Sylphie started her day by running around Sharia, which was the city of magic. So she tried her best, because she didn't want to lag behind Rudy. After that, we see Sylphie in the magic class, and she was bored because Rudy had already taught her about magic. Despite everything, school was fun for Sylphie, and she was happy to see the hard-working Ariel studying. In the evening, Sylphie showed her friends the shortcut that she discovered. Luke said the town Sharia was built like a maze, and Ariel was surprised, and he said he just quoting a girl that he dated recently. Following this, Sylphie remembered that Rudy was a Nodos too, and wondered if he is chasing after girls. During the night, Sylphie thought of Rudy and felt that he was the only thing she could think about. She wondered what kind of relationship she wanted to have with Rudy, and she realized that she loves Rudy. A month passed since Julie arrived, and Rudy taught her to cast earth spells. After that, we see Julie manage to cast a spell without incantations. They were happy to see Julie growing up, and Rudy showed her many new things. Also, Rudy learned that Zenoba took good care of her. In addition, Julie became Rudy's apprentice, and Zenoba's junior disciple. In the afternoon, Zenoba shared his passion about making figures. He showed Julie his beloved Rygerd action figure, and Rudy asked him about the Roxy figure. Suddenly, he got goosebumps and knew he was about to hear a lecture from his master. Zenoba showed Rudy the figure of Roxy, and Rudy was stunned to see his Roxy figure destroyed into many pieces. Rudy was angry and couldn't believe that his beloved Roxy figure was destroyed, so Rudy thought Zenoba was his enemy and asked Zenoba to explain why his doll was broken. Zenoba explained that the Doldia girls were the culprits, and he cried. Rudy learned that the Doldia girls played with his toy and broke it. He was furious, and he intended to take revenge on the two girls. In the followed day, we see Linnea and Persena on the campus, and Rudy waited for them. They looked down on them, and Linnea insulted Zenoba. Zenoba got angry, but Rudy said he will handle it, and he insulted them back. Then Linnea said she is busy and said she will let it slide this time. Rudy provoked them, and Linnea was furious. Following this, Rudy used his observation haki, and he prepared countermeasures against them. He defeated Linnea with a strong kick, and knocked her out with ease. Meanwhile, Persena tried to escape, and Zenoba couldn't catch her. So Rudy used a mud spell, and he knocked the second girl out with a little rock too. Then they tied up the two girls, and Rudy brought them to his room. Followed the both girls woke up and they were confused. Rudy planned to do a little experiment, and he grabbed Persena's boobs. The reason was he wondered if he can solve his sausage problem. It didn't work, and he began with the main topic. Persena said they haven't done anything to him, but Rudy showed his destroyed Roxy figure. Then Rudy said they destroyed his goddess, and he showed them his treasure. Linnea and Persena saw the scared faces of Rudy's friends, and they understood they are in danger. As a result, Persena said Linnea stomped on his creepy figure and said it was her idea to destroy his figure. Following this, they started to blame each other, and Rudy said they both are guilty. Linnea threatened him that her father would punish him if he did something funny. At that moment, Rudy remembered that he was innocently punished, and asked if he should do the same to them. They were scared, and Persena said she don't care what happens to Linnea, and asked him to spare her. In the end, Rudy said they need to put the figure back together like it was, and the girls were confused. In the next morning, Sylphie learned that Rudy and Zenoba had locked up some girls. Rudy said he didn't do anything sexual, and asked Fitz about a punishment that won't leave them holding a grudge or seeking revenge. Later they went to see the girls, and they asked Rudy to forgive them. They peed on themselves and said they are very hungry. So Rudy and Fitz cleaned the pants of the both girls and let them go. Following this, Linnea said she will do everything he says, but nothing that would make babies, and Persuna said he is allowed to touch the boobs of Linnea. Suddenly, the two girls insulted Fitz, and Rudy knew they needs a punishment. As a result, Fitz painted their faces with a magical ink and said the right incantation make it permanent. Fitz told them, if they don't listen Rudy, she will cast a spell and tattoo them for life. So they got along with each other, and Linnea asked Rudy about his fighting skills. Linnea was surprised that her Aunt Jelaine taught him to fight. Afterwards they said goodbye and apologized that they destroyed his doll. Then Rudy learned that Fitz lied and he just used cheap paints for magic circles. However, Fitz asked him about his treasure, and he almost saw the panty of Roxy. Rudy could change the topic, and Fitz discovered his pillow. Suddenly Fitz asked Rudy if he wants to see his face, but she didn't have the courage to show him his true identity. Sylphie wished him a good night, and Rudy asked himself if he was into boys. He wondered what had happened if Fitz showed him his face. A few days later, Rudy did kinky things in the class, and Linnea told him to keep his hands out of her skirt. He had a lot of fun with his classmates, and Cliff felt disturbed. So Rudy was scolded by Cliff, and he apologized for disturbing his studies. Later, Cliff walked home and he saw a beautiful woman sitting by the window. He blushed and fell in love with her instantly. After that, we see Rudy. He noticed that Cliff was bullied by other students of the school. He stopped them, and they all were feared by seeing Quagmire. Following, he asked Cliff if he is okay, and he thanked Rudy for his help. Rudy wondered why does Cliff even hate him in the first place, but he guessed it's not a big deal. In the next morning, he started his day like always, and Cliff spied on him. Suddenly, Cliff wanted to talk to him, and he asked for advice about a girl he liked. Rudy was confused and didn't know what he wanted from him. Then he learned Cliff got a crush on Alina, and he thought he just made jokes. Cliff was serious and told him that he fell in love with her. He also asked Rudy if he could introduce Alina to him. In the followed day, he asked Fitz about advice, and he was glad. that Rudy just helped someone else. Rudy told Fitz the problem, and Sylphie was worried that Rudy got feelings for Alina too. He replied he got no interest in Alina, and he learned that Fitz had a crush on someone too. Following this, Rudy introduced Cliff to his friend Alina, and he was prepared if she reject him. Cliff introduced himself, and she asked him what brings him to see her. Then she took Rudy to the side and asked him why he brought her such a gullible boy. Alina said she can't stick to just one partner, and Rudy told her to turn him down. Following this, Rudy left them alone, and he thought that Alina will reject him. In the followed morning, Rudy was shocked to see them become a couple. Cliff got NPC Riz, and Alina told him that Cliff's Riz level is over 9,000. So they both enjoyed their couple life, and Linnea was disgusted by seeing them. Rudy realized that Cliff had infinite NPC Riz, and he hoped to cure his problem soon as possible. A few weeks later, the beast men and women fought duels in the fall, and the winners lead their families. He knew it's the Doldia tribe's version of a marriage proposal. Then he arrived in class, and Linnea and Persena were hiding because they get inundated with suitor in the form of challengers. They wrote him a note and wished him to have fun. Suddenly, Rudy was challenged by a beast men, and Rudy rejected the proposal duel because he wasn't into guys. Suddenly he learned Persena caused him the troubles and told all challenger that he is her boss. In the library, Fitz learned that the beast men challenged them all, and his two classmates caused him the trouble. Then Rudy learned one challenger is a girl, and he wondered why Fitz was in a bad mood. So he went outside to see after Fitz, but all challengers were defeated. The demon was glad to see Rudy, and he told him he is the fiancé of Kishirika. As a result, he was challenged to a duel by Demon King Badigadi. Demon King Badigadi said he heard a lot about Rudy, because Kishirika said he is very strong. Following this, Rudy learned that Man-God caused him all the troubles. Rudy asked if Badigadi knew something about the name Man-God. So Badigadi learned Rudy met him in his dreams, but he knew nothing about the name Man-God. Suddenly he started to laugh, and he forced Rudy to laugh with him. After that, Fitz brought him his magic wand and he told Badi that he is ready for the fight. Badi said he will spare his life, but in exchange he wants to see Rudy's strongest magic attack in the duel. However, Rudy accepted his condition, and he prepared his strongest earth spell. He created a dangerous rock that spun at inhuman speed, and Rudy asked Badi if he is ready. Then Rudy launched his attack, and he destroyed the whole body of Badi and thought he is dead. All students were shocked, and Badi was alive. He regenerated himself with ease. After that, he congratulated Rudy and told everyone that he is the winner of the fight. Suddenly he punched Rudy in the face, and Fitz healed Rudy's injuries. Rudy thanked Fitz for healing his injury, and he was happy that the day ended. A few months later, Persena thanked Rudy for protecting them, and she allowed Rudy to feel up Linnea's boobs as his reward. Suddenly they heard someone laugh, and the Demon King Badigadi appeared in the class. A few months later, we see Persena, who was teasing Rudy with a piece of chicken leg. Sylphie thought that Rudy was into this type of girl, and she was sad. Later, Princess Ariel tried to cheer her up, and said that although she felt strongly for Rudy, he didn't even notice her. Sylphie told her friends that she hadn't told Rudy about her true identity because she was afraid that Rudy might have forgotten her. So Ariel suggested that Sylphie be entrusted with the matter of Rudy. In the afternoon, Rudy studied about the teleportation disaster in the library, and he found out a lot of interesting information. He asked Fitz for advice about experts on summoning, but Fitz was depressed. Suddenly Fitz said that he knew a summoning specialist, and he was sure that Rudy knew the person's name too. Rudy learned about the special student Silent 7-star, and he remembered that Zenoba said she is a weird person. After that, he decided to visit Silent in her room, and he thought that she is just a normal NPC character like the others. At that moment, Rudy was shocked to see Orstad's partner, and he ran away. Silent told Rudy that he was being rude, and he fainted from fear. Later he woke up, and he told Fitz that he had a scary dream about a masked girl who planned to kill him. Silent replied that she saved him last time, and he thought that Orstad planned to kill him a second time. Sylphie was worried about Rudy, and she learned that he recalled the memories of the dragon god who killed him last time. However, Silent was surprised about his visit, and she showed him a letter with Japanese kanjis. She asked him a few questions on Japanese, and he told her that he wasn't one of the written names. So Rudy learned that Silent was the girl he tried to save from a truck, and she introduced herself as Nanahoshi Shizuka. She thought that Rudy was from Europe, but she wondered why he could speak Japanese. Nanahoshi asked him about his real name, and he introduced himself as Rudy. Then she realized that he was scared at her, and she told him that she is on his side. In addition, she planned to work with him, because she got the intention to return to their old world. Suddenly Rudy said that he didn't want to go back to their old world, because he loves the world in which he was reborn. At that moment Sylphie felt left out, and she asked the two of them if they could speak in a language that she understood. Silent learned that Rudy was reincarnated, and she said that she was more or less teleported into this world. Rudy also said that he died after a truck accident, and he learned more about Orstad. She said she found him strange, and asked Orstad to save his life. Then Rudy learned that Silent was looking for two Japanese using teleportation circles. Silent told him more about her journey, that she tried to find a way home. Also she said she met a person who said she may have been summoned into this world by someone. Following this, Silent said that her search for a solution had failed, and she suspected that Rudy was also summoned into the world. Rudy wanted to know who her informant was, and she replied that she promised to keep his name secret. Afterwards, Rudy discovered the magic circle that Silent was studying. He learned that she has no magical powers because she was teleported to this world. As a result, Rudy began to trust Silent, and she wanted to know his opinion on how he thinks about the world. Following this, Silent offered Rudy a deal because she needs his magic, and he wants knowledge about the world. Later she told them that she had teleported into the world 5 years ago. She said that she most likely caused the teleportation disaster. Suddenly Fitz became angry, and he attacked Silent because he couldn't forgive her for causing the disaster. Rudy tried to calm Fitz down, because he misunderstood her words. At that moment, Fitz couldn't believe that Rudy wasn't angry. Rudy said that she was just a victim of the disaster, and Fitz apologized to Silent. After that, Silent said that he didn't understand the accident either, and Rudy remembered that Man-God claimed Orstad was the culprit. After that, Silent said that she didn't understand the accident either, and Rudy remembered that Man-God claimed Orstad was the culprit. In the evening, he returned to the school dormitory with Fitz. Rudy told Fitz that he trusted Silent, and he was grateful that Fitz was concerned about him. The real reason Fitz asked him about Silent was because she's worried that Rudy will fall in love with Silent. The next morning, Sylphie looked out the window, and she saw a couple in love. Then Sylphie feared that Rudy had no feelings for her, and she was still afraid to tell Rudy about her true identity. She also realized that Silent and Rudy shared a bond, and she thought that Rudy had a crush on Silent. As a result, Sylphie was jealous of her because the two of them spent a lot of time together every day. She didn't know what to do, and she wished she had the courage to tell him the truth. A few months passed, and Rudy started his day with a workout. Body helped him with his workout, and he asked Rudy why did he desire strength. Then Body told his friend that there are more important things in life, like the love of women. After his workout session, he eats breakfast and goes to his class. Rudy realized that since the fight against Demon King Body, many students feared him. Later, Persena and Linnea came to cheer him up, but instead the two girls argued. Additionally, they said that he could run this school because he defeated Fitz. In class, Cliff started asking him if he had any knowledge about curses, so Rudy began to tell the story of the spelled demons, which his good friend Rudyard told him. Cliff was grateful for the great story, and they were reprimanded for being disruptive in class. After class, he always had lunch with Zanoba and Julie. Then we see Body, who showed up and he was drinking delicious booze. Julie and Zanoba were interested in his drink, so they were offered booze, and Julie was very happy about it. They had a lot of fun together, and Rudy told Zanoba that he still had a lecture. In the afternoon, Rudy always spent time helping Silent with her research on teleportation circle. Then Rudy managed to teleport a feather from a magical creature to the room, but Silent said that the experiment failed. However, Rudy learned that her goal is to summon a person with a teleportation circle. He was worried that it might cause another mass teleportation disaster, but Silent assured him that she did not plan to cause a disaster. She said that the reason she starts with the basics is to understand the theory about teleportation magic. Following this, Rudy asked her more about teleportation magic and she threw at him a book. In the evening, Rudy always spent time teaching Julie magic and they always made figures together. He noticed that Julie is very talented and he enjoyed his time with Zanoba. Rudy hasn't been visiting the library lately and he still hasn't found a solution to his problem. In the following days, Rudy received a letter from his friend Saul Goodman. He wrote that he was near his school and invited Rudy to lunch. However, Rudy met his friends in a tavern and Saul was happy to see him again after all this time. They talked about their adventures together, and he was surprised that Alina had a boyfriend. She said she will never part with Cliff and they enjoyed lunch together. Unfortunately, Saul was called on a mission and Rudy thanked him for his invitation to lunch. Later, Alina said that she was going on an adventure trip with Cliff, and Alina offered him to join them. He politely declined and said that they should stay away from dangerous places. So Rudy went back to school, and on the way he looked around the city. Suddenly he saw Fitz, and he greeted his schoolmates. He noticed that Fitz looked different, and Luke changed the subject. So Rudy thought that maybe his cousin was into boys and he wouldn't let him talk to Fitz because they were on a date. Luke was just trying to keep Sylphie's secret because he knew that she hadn't told Rudy about her true identity yet. Rudy was curious, and he was sad that Fitz was trying to avoid him. On the way back to school, Rudy wondered why Fitz didn't want to talk to him. As a result, he tried to find his friend Zenoba to talk with him about his problem. Unfortunately, Zenoba wasn't at school, and he decided to go to the library. When he arrived at the library, he met Fitz, and he behaved normally again. Rudy asked Fitz why he was ignored earlier, so Fitz replied that he wasn't allowed to speak while on duty. Then Fitz apologized for not being allowed to answer him, and Rudy thought that Fitz hated him. Fitz replied that he could never hate him, and Rudy blushed by his smile. In the evening he made his figures and thought about Fitz. Rudy realized that he really liked Fitz, because Fitz had helped him all the time when he was struggling in school. In the followed morning, Fitz walked around the school with Ariel. He saw Fitz's cute smile, and he was shocked that he was into boys. As a result, he decided to go to the principal and he planned to find out more information about Fitz. The headmaster confirmed that Fitz was a boy, but Rudy suspected that Fitz was actually a girl. Later, Rudy was deep in thought and Fitz appeared behind him. He was startled, and they both fell to the ground. Meanwhile, Rudy learned that Fitz was actually a girl, and he denied it. Suddenly, Rudy realized that his sausage was working after touching Fitz, and he wondered why Fitz tried to hide his gender. Then he understood that Fitz is the solution to cure his sausage problem, and he planned to download the Mickey Mouse hot dog song to celebrate his success. In the following days, we see Rudy tired because he couldn't sleep after his success with his sausage problem. Then he met his cousin, and Luke said that he would like to talk to him, but Rudy replied that he didn't know anything. In addition, he mentioned that he is not involved with the main family and had no intention of causing problems for him. In the afternoon, Sylphie was called to Princess Ariel's meeting room. Ariel told her that she knows what happened to the two of them. She also knows that Rudy is a trustworthy person, and asked her what Sylphie planned to do. Additionally, she suggested that Sylphie should reveal her identity to her beloved childhood friend, and Ariel tried to support her. Ariel knew Sylphie was shy and she tried to encourage her friend to show Rudy her feelings. Following this, she asked Sylphie to reveal her identity so that she could be happy with Rudy. Sylphie replied that she loves Rudy, but she is afraid that he won't recognize her anymore, and Ariel said that she doesn't have to worry. Then they thought of an idea how they could point out to Rudy that Fitz is his childhood friend Sylphie. Unfortunately, they had no idea, and Sylphie told them that Rudy initially thought she was a boy. They were surprised by the story, and Ariel came up with a plan. Before she explained the plan to Sylphie, she asked what kind of relationship she wanted to have with Rudy. Sylphie replied that she liked that if a man chokes her, and her friends were shocked that she was into hentai stuff. However, Ariel revealed a plan to Sylphie, and she said that she must not lose the courage to confess her love to Rudy. She said that she will do her best, and Ariel wished her friend good luck. In the days that followed, Sylphie looked for Rudy at lunch. He was surprised to see Fitz, and he told Zenoba that he was going out to have a conversation. Then Fitz asked Rudy for a favor, and he immediately agreed without even listening to the favor. So Sylphie began to tell him that Princess Ariel was looking for a special flower in a dangerous place. Rudy planned to help her, and said that he has friends who can get her the flower. The reason for the favor was that Sylphie was planning to go on an adventure with him. In the end, Sylphie managed to convince him to go into the forest with her to collect the flower. The following day they went together into a forest, and Rudy was happy to accompany her. Sylphie asked if she should pay him, but Rudy replied that he didn't need to be paid. Suddenly Sylphie had naughty thoughts and she blushed. Later, Rudy cast a spell that made snow melt and she was impressed by him. Sylphie asked him about his wall, and she learned that he had received it from a young noblewoman, so she learned more about Rudy, and she was happy that her plan worked so far. She then activated a spell and planned to change the weather by conjuring up a storm. Rudy said that he can make the rain clouds disappear, and Sylphie tried to prevent his magic. As a result, Rudy couldn't activate a spell and it started to rain. Then Rudy suggested that they take shelter in a cave, and they found a hiding place. Sylphie followed him, and she hoped that her plan would work to win Rudy's heart. Meanwhile, Rudy noticed something was wrong, and he wondered if Fitz cast the rain clouds. Afterwards, he dried his clothes, and he knew that it was wrong to take off his underwear in front of a girl. Rudy noticed that Fitz was shaking, but he didn't want to scare her. Rudy said that he knows about the traditions of the elves, and he turned around so she could take off her clothes. Unfortunately, Fitz didn't want to take off her clothes because she decided to reveal her true identity. Rudy didn't know what he should do and she took his hand. Following this, Rudy worried that she was catching a cold, and Sylvie asked him to help her take off her clothes. Rudy began to take off her coat and he opened her shirt. At that moment, Fitz's behavior seemed familiar to him, but he continued to remove her clothing. Rudy noticed that this situation seemed familiar, and he thought about his childhood. After Fitz stood in front of him in just his underwear, he said that he should take off her glasses. Rudy asked Fitz if her name was Sylvie, and she hugged him. He was happy to see her, and surprised that she was still a crybaby. Then Sylvie revealed to him that she got a crush on him since childhood, and she wants to be with him forever. A short time later, Rudy was probably shocked by himself because he didn't notice that Fitz was actually Sylvie. He thought it was because Sylvie was a crybaby and she acted differently as Fitz. However, he remembered the smile that made his heart pound. Rudy decided to reveal his feelings and replied that he loves her too. She was happy, and they kissed in the cave. However, Rudy proved that he still had Riz and he learned that Sylvie is a virgin. He planned to make a hot dog with Sylvie, but his sausage started to cause him problems. So they stopped making love, and Rudy told her about his problem. He was ashamed and apologized to Sylvie, but she wasn't angry. Then she said that he can talk to her casually, and they smiled together. He then thanked her for the necklace and wondered why she was pretending to be a boy. She told Rudy that a lot had happened. Also, she had promised herself that she would become strong to protect him. A few hours later, it stopped raining, and she told him about what happened after the mass teleportation. She said that she had disguised herself as Fitz, and was hesitant to reveal her true identity to Rudy because she was afraid he wouldn't recognize her. Then he teased her, and they enjoyed the day together for finding each other again after all this time. Later, she returned to school, and Sylvie said that she got business. Rudy said goodbye, and Sylvie wished she had some medicine to help him. Back at school, Ariel said she feared her plan had failed. Sylvie told her friends about what had happened, and Ariel found it funny that he had problems with his sausage. Meanwhile, Luke understood why Rudy was ashamed, and he felt his pain that he suffered. He said he wanted to help Rudy because he understood a man's pride. Following this, Ariel apologized, and Luke asked if Sylvie planned to cure Rudy's illness. Luke said he will help them, and the girls wondered what he was up to. Then we see Zenoba trying to use magic, and Luke went back to the meeting room. He heard that Ariel was trying to give Sylvie advice, but he made a comment that hurt Sylvie's feelings. The reason for this was that he wanted to help her, and he showed her a powerful aphrodisiac. So he explained to the girls that the potion was no longer made because the city of Fitoa was wiped out. Additionally, he gave the aphrodisiac to Sylvie, and warned her, because it could cause a man to lose all his control. Sylvie thanked Luke for his help, and they wished her good luck. Ariel also gave her money so that they could have a nice date. The following evening, Sylvie gathered all her courage and planned to become an adult. Rudy opened the door for her and she entered his room. Suddenly, Sylvie said that she planned to stay in his room for the night, and he was surprised. Then Sylvie was ready to become a woman and she was getting into the mood. So they celebrated their reunion, and Sylvie was nervous as she drank booze. Afterwards, he showed her the magical potion, and Sylvie said that it was a cure for his sausage problem. He drank the powerful love potion and he noticed that Sylvie was nervous. Suddenly, Sylvie said that she is ready to become an OnlyFans girl, and Rudy smiled by hearing her words. Then she decided to take a drink, and she noticed that her stomach was starting to tingle. She knew she was ready to make a lot of love with Rudy that night, and said she was nervous. Suddenly the potion started to work, and Rudy felt that something was wrong with his body. He apologized for not being able to control himself and started hugging her. The following morning, Rudy woke up in his bed and he was naked. He noticed that he was alone in his room, and he realized that he drank a love potion. He wasn't sure if he was being dumped and hoped that Sylvie was just carrying out her duties as the princess's guard. Rudy looked again at the blood in his bed, and he felt sad because he thought he was being dumped again. Suddenly Sylvie appeared and apologized because she had things to do. Rudy was glad that Sylvie hadn't left him. In the afternoon, Rudy introduced himself to Princess Ariel. He thanked them for helping them with his illness. He then said that he didn't plan to interfere in political affairs, but he planned to help Sylvie. Following this, Ariel asked what he intended to do. He replied that he had to search for his family after the mass teleportation. He also decided to marry Sylvie, and Ariel named her Rudy's wife. They support the relationship between the two, and Sylvie said that he should take good care of her. Ariel then said that Sylvie no longer has to disguise herself as a boy, and in return she will use Rudy's name to improve her reputation. At the end, Sylvie thanked her friends and she was happy to become Rudy's wife.